Now, I made a mistake, but in this video, I'm gonna fix it. Now, I love Harbor Freight because I appreciate their prices, and I really don't like to pay more for something if I don't have to. But I have received a lot of comments from my viewers that Harbor Freight is not as inexpensive as it used to be. And so I wanted to look into that and see if this is true. Now, a lot of places are more expensive today than they have been in the past because inflation has really taken off like crazy over the past few years. And I was sure that Harbor Freight was no exception. So I posted a video a while back with a bit of an experiment to answer that question. First, I found an old ad from Harbor Freight from way back in 2012, and then I found all of those same items from that ad in a Harbor Freight store today and compared the prices. I did make some adjustments for inflation and came to the conclusion ultimately that Harbor Freight's prices are actually more expensive today than they were back then. Now, I thought that it was a great experiment and it was a good way to see how tool prices have changed over time. But this is where I made a mistake. I compared the old sale prices from that ad to the new regular prices in the store today, and that's why everything seemed to be more expensive. And you guys let me know. But the thing is that Harbor Freight is always running different sales and promotions, and so what I really need to do is compare those old sale prices to current sale prices. So let's fix that and answer the question once and for all. Have Harbor Freight's prices gone up relative to inflation, or is Harbor Freight a better value than ever? All right, so in the last video, I went into a bit of an explanation on inflation, and I'm not gonna bore you with that again. But if you do want to check out that video, I'll link it here and I'll add a link to the description. But the short version is that according to the Federal Reserve, $1 in 2012, which is when this ad was printed, is worth around $1.33 today, or an increase of about 33%. So said a little bit different, $1 today has less purchasing power by 33% than $1 back in 2012. So if something cost $10 back then, and today costs $13.30, we can say that it's basically the same price adjusted for inflation. Anything lower than that is a better value. Anything higher than that is expensive. All right, so let's talk about what I found for Harbor Freight. Now, the challenge I had at the time was, again, I was comparing the sale prices to the current regular prices. And the challenge is that, not everything is on sale at the same time. But I was able to go back and see the sale prices or the last sale prices for a lot of these items. And so let's get into that and we'll talk about each one. Now let's start with the furniture dolly. The furniture dolly in the old ad was $7.99, and in stores today you can buy it for $11.99 at regular price. There was a sale recently, however, that just ended on the 17th of March, and at that time this furniture dolly was on sale for $7.96. So that's kind of incredible. The price was actually slightly lower even before adjusting for inflation. And then after you adjust for inflation, this item is actually much cheaper today on sale than it was back in 2012 by around 34%. So again, that's pretty interesting. Now let's talk about the rest. Next, we have this drill set. Back in 2012, it was $10.49, and the current regular price is $14.99. But in a recent sale that also ended on March 17th, this item was priced at $9.96. Again, cheaper today than even it was back then, and adjusting for inflation, it's a much better deal. The compressor was $39.99 back in 2012, and a recent sale had it for $49.99, and that's an increase of 25%, which is less than the inflation amount of 33%, which means that this tool is also cheaper than it was back in 2012 after adjusting for inflation. The same is true for the Harbor Freight heat gun, the drill and driver and flashlight kit, and the driveway alert system. The sale price for the steel loading ramps was $59.99, up from $49.99 back in 2012, which is an increase of 33.3%, which means that this item costs basically the same today on sale as it did back in 2012. Now for the floor jack, in the original video, I had compared it to this one, but that's not actually an exact fit. And so I found one online that seemed to be a much better fit with the original floor jack. And that sale price recently was $89.97, up from $69.99 back in 2012, or an increase of 28.55%. Again, that is lower than the rate of inflation, which is 33%. So that means that this item, again, today, when adjusting for inflation, costs less. Now, there was one item which I was unable to find a sale price, and that's this battery float charger. And so I excluded that one. I also excluded the roller cabinets, again, just because of how much they have changed over the years. And so it's really difficult to find an equivalent. The only thing that I found that actually went up in price was this ratchet clamp. In 2012, the sale price was $1.99, and the most recent sale price was $3.49. So that is an overall increase of 75%, which is more than inflation, meaning that this item is more expensive today than it was back then. Now, I did mention in my last video that I think that they made some improvements to this tool, and so maybe the increase in price for that item is justified. So what does all of this mean? Well, if you look at this chart, you can see that when we compare the old sale price to the most recent sale price, Harbor Freight is actually cheaper today than it was 12 years ago. And in some cases, even without adjusting for inflation. So the conclusions that I reached in my first video were definitely off. In fact, it looks like for most products, Harbor Freight is cheaper today than it actually was back then, after adjusting for inflation, in some cases not even with adjusting for inflation. So if that really is the truth, then where are all of these comments complaining about how Harbor Freight is so much more expensive coming from? Well, here's what I think about that. Now, Harbor Freight in the past has always tried to be the low-cost leader. It's really their bread and butter. And over time, they became known as a company that sells cheap tools. Sometimes cheap in the inexpensive sense, and sometimes cheap in the low-quality sense. But over the past few years, they have really tried to change their strategy and focus on providing higher quality tools while still providing those same inexpensive tools for people that need or want them. So have their prices gone up? Well, no, they haven't, and they seem to actually be down if you compare apples to apples. But their strategy has changed since then, and they are selling higher grade tools today, and most of those tools cost more, mainly because you're paying extra for that higher quality. So if you're looking at those higher quality tools and thinking, man, Harbor Freight's prices are just out of control, then it really isn't a fair comparison. So there. I've fixed my mistake. Please forgive me for my last video, but I do appreciate all of the comments setting me straight. And I hope that this video provides a more informed and a more complete perspective. And I do welcome all of your comments. So if you do have anything to say, be sure to leave me a comment below. Share with us your experience with Harbor Freight. What do you like about it now versus in the past? Have they gotten better? Are there things that they do today that you hate? Are there things that they did in the past that you love? Leave me a comment and let me know. Also, if you want to learn more about Harbor Freight's strategy to sell higher quality tools, then click on this video here. They have really taken the old good, better, best strategy that was pioneered by Sears, and they've made it into something truly remarkable. Also, be sure to like this video, leave me a comment, let me know your thoughts, and we'll see you in the next one.